Let me address something that almost nobody talks about in personal finance. Everyone tells you to save more, save early, save consistently. Max out your 401k, build your nest egg. The entire financial industry is built around getting you to accumulate more and more and more. But nobody tells you when to stop. Nobody tells you when you have reached the point where saving more is actually hurting you. Nobody tells you when you have enough and can finally start enjoying the money you have spent decades accumulating. This silence is not accidental. Financial advisors make money by managing your assets. The more you save, the more they manage, the more they earn. They have no incentive to tell you that you have enough. Mutual fund companies want your continued contributions. Banks want your deposits. The entire system is designed to keep you saving forever, even when saving no longer serves your interests. Today, I am going to break that silence. I am going to tell you exactly when you can stop saving for retirement and start actually living. Not a vague someday when you feel ready, but specific criteria you can apply to your own situation to know with confidence that you have crossed the finish line. This might be the most liberating financial conversation you have ever had, because for many of you watching, the answer is now. You have already won the game. You just do not know it yet. Let me tell you about a conversation that changed how I think about this entire question. In 1992, I had dinner with a friend named Margaret. She was 68 years old, had been retired for 3 years, and was utterly miserable. Not because she lacked money. Margaret had nearly $2 million in savings, a paid-off home, a pension, and Social Security. By any reasonable standard, she was wealthy. Her misery came from a different source. She could not stop saving. Even in retirement, she was adding to her accounts rather than spending from them. She clipped coupons obsessively. She denied herself travel she wanted to take. She wore clothes that needed replacing. She lived like someone with $50,000, not $2 million. I asked her why. She said she was afraid of running out. What if she lived to 100? What if medical costs exploded? What if there was another Great Depression? What if inflation destroyed her purchasing power? She had an endless list of fears, each one justifying continued deprivation. I did some simple math with her. Margaret, I said, you have $2 million. If you earn just 4% on that money, which was conservative even then, you would generate $80,000 per year without touching the principal. Your expenses are about $40,000 per year. You could literally double your spending, never touch your principal, and still have money growing in your accounts. She looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. The math was simple, but her psychology could not accept it. She had spent 45 years in saving mode, building the habits of accumulation, denying herself today for the promise of security tomorrow. Those habits had become her identity. She did not know how to be a spender. She only knew how to be a saver. Margaret died in 2004 at age 80. She left an estate of nearly $3 million, having grown her wealth throughout retirement while living far below her means. Her children inherited money that Margaret herself never enjoyed. The security she accumulated was never actually used for security. It was hoarded out of fear and habit until she was gone. The saddest part of Margaret's story is that her children did not even need the money. They were successful in their own careers, had their own savings, had their own homes. The inheritance was nice, but it did not transform their lives. Meanwhile, Margaret spent 16 years of retirement denying herself experiences that would have mattered enormously to her. She never took the trip to Italy she had dreamed about since her 20s. She never upgraded her car, even though the old one gave her constant anxiety about breakdowns. She never hosted the family reunions she wanted because she worried about the expense. She lived small so she could die rich, and the richness she died with benefited no one as much as the living would have benefited her. I share Margaret's story not to judge her, but to illuminate a pattern I see constantly. The skills that build wealth in your working years, frugality, discipline, delayed gratification, become liabilities in retirement if you cannot turn them off. The habits that served you for decades can trap you if you do not recognize when the game has changed. I think about Margaret often because her story is tragically common. Millions of people save diligently for decades, reach retirement with more than enough money, and then cannot bring themselves to spend it. They die with full bank accounts and empty experiences. They win the game but refuse to collect the prize. I do not want that for you. So let me give you a framework for knowing when you have truly, definitively reached the point where you can stop saving and start living. There are 4 criteria that, taken together, tell you that you have enough. If you meet all 4, you can stop saving with complete confidence. You have won. The game is over, and to enjoy what you have built. Before I explain these criteria, let me be clear about who this message is for. This is not for someone who is 35 and wondering if they should stop contributing to their 401k. You should not stop. You are in the accumulation phase, and that phase needs to continue. This is for people who are in or approaching retirement, who have been saving diligently for decades, who have built substantial nest eggs, and who are now paralyzed by fear of running out, even though the math suggests they have more than enough. This is for people who have won the game but do not know it. This is for people who need permission to stop saving and start living. If that is you, listen carefully. What I am about to share could change the entire second half of your life. The first criterion is that your guaranteed income covers your essential expenses. By guaranteed income, I mean money that will arrive every month regardless of what the stock market does. Social Security is guaranteed income. A pension is guaranteed income. An annuity is guaranteed income. These income streams cannot be outlived and do not depend on investment performance. By essential expenses, I mean the spending you absolutely cannot cut: housing, whether that is a mortgage payment, rent, or property taxes and maintenance on a paid-off home, food, utilities, basic transportation, health care premiums, and typical medical costs, insurance. These are the expenses that keep you alive and housed and healthy. Add up your guaranteed income, add up your essential expenses. If the first number is bigger than the second number, you have cleared the first hurdle. Your survival is not dependent on your investments. No matter what happens to your portfolio, you will not be homeless or hungry or without medical care. This first criterion is crucial because it eliminates the catastrophic risk that drives most retirement anxiety. The fear of running out of money is really the fear of destitution, of losing your home, of being unable to afford food or medicine. When guaranteed income covers essential expenses, that fear becomes irrational. You literally cannot become destitute because money you cannot lose covers needs you cannot avoid. For many people, Social Security alone comes close to covering essential expenses, especially if you have paid off your mortgage. If your essential expenses are $3,000 per month and Social Security provides $2,500, you only need $500 per month from other sources. That is $6,000 per year, which a modest portfolio can easily generate. The second criterion is that your portfolio can sustain your desired lifestyle for longer than you will likely live. This is where most of the retirement planning math happens and where most people make it far too complicated. Let me give you a simple rule that works for the vast majority of situations. Take your investment portfolio, multiply it by 4%. That is roughly what you can withdraw each year with high confidence that your money will last 30 years or more. This is called the 4% rule. And while academics debate its exact parameters, it remains a reasonable guideline for most retirees. If you have $500,000, 4% is $20,000 per year. If you have $1 million, 4% is $40,000 per year. If you have $2 million, 4% is $80,000 per year. Now compare that number to your discretionary spending needs. Discretionary spending is everything beyond the essentials I mentioned earlier: travel, entertainment, dining out, gifts, hobbies, the things that make life enjoyable but that you could technically survive without. If 4% of your portfolio plus your guaranteed income exceeds your total desired spending, you are done. You can stop saving. You have enough to live the life you want for longer than you will be alive to live it. Let me make this concrete with an example. Say you are 67 years old. Your Social Security is $28,000 per year. Your essential expenses are $32,000 per year. Your desired discretionary spending is another $20,000 per year. So your total desired spending is $52,000. You have $600,000 in retirement savings. 4% of that is $24,000 per year. Your total income capacity is $28,000 from Social Security plus $24,000 from your portfolio, which equals $52,000. That exactly matches your desired spending. You can stop saving. In fact, if you continue saving, you are literally taking money from your current self to give to your future heirs rather than enjoying it yourself. Now some people hear this example and immediately start finding reasons why it would not work for them. Their expenses are higher. Their Social Security is lower. They do not trust the 4% rule. They want to leave money to their children. These are all legitimate considerations, and I will address them. But I want you to notice the impulse, the instinct to find reasons why you cannot stop saving. That instinct is often fear masquerading as prudence. It is the accumulation habit looking for justification to continue, even when continuation no longer serves you. Before you dismiss this framework, do the actual math for your own situation. Many people who assume they cannot afford to stop saving are surprised to find that they have already crossed the threshold. They've been running on a treadmill that ended years ago without noticing. I want to add something important about the 4% rule. It is not a rigid law. It is a guideline based on historical analysis of how portfolios have performed over rolling 30-year periods. In some periods, you could have withdrawn 5 or even 6% safely. In others, 4% would have depleted your portfolio. The rule works best when you remain flexible. If the market drops significantly in your early retirement years, you reduce discretionary spending temporarily. If the market performs well, you can spend more freely. This flexibility dramatically increases the sustainability of any withdrawal strategy. The people who get in trouble with portfolio withdrawals are usually those who refuse to adjust. They set a spending level and maintain it regardless of market conditions. That rigidity can cause problems. But if you are willing to tighten your belt during bad years and loosen it during good years, even a withdrawal rate higher than 4% becomes sustainable for most scenarios. The third criterion is that you have a buffer for unexpected expenses. Life throws curveballs. The roof needs replacement. The car dies. A family member needs help. Medical expenses exceed what you planned. These are not regular expenses you can budget for, but they happen to almost everyone over a long retirement. You need a buffer to handle these surprises without derailing your entire financial plan. I recommend having at least 1 to 2 years of essential expenses in liquid savings, meaning money you can access quickly without selling investments at a bad time. If your essential expenses are $3,000 per month, that means $36,000 to $70,000, $2,000 in a savings account or money market fund. This money is not for investing. It is not for generating returns. It is for sleeping well at night, knowing that when something unexpected happens, you can handle it without panic. Once you have this buffer established and maintained, you have cleared the third criterion. You can absorb surprises without your long-term plan falling apart. The fourth criterion is that you have made peace with uncertainty. This one is psychological rather than mathematical, but it might be the most important of all. No matter how well you plan, the future is uncertain. You might live longer than expected. Inflation might be higher than projected. The stock market might have a terrible decade right when you need it to perform. Healthcare costs might explode. Any number of things could go differently than you assumed. To stop saving and start living, you need to accept this uncertainty rather than trying to eliminate it with more and more accumulation. You need to recognize that perfect security is impossible and that pursuing it will cost you the very life you are trying to secure. This does not mean being reckless. The first three criteria give you substantial protection against most scenarios. but it means acknowledging that some residual risk will always remain. And that is okay. The alternative, continuing to save and deprive yourself indefinitely, carries its own risks. The risk of dying with money unspent, the risk of missing experiences you can never have again, the risk of optimizing for a future that may not come at the expense of a present that is slipping away. When you can look at your financial situation, acknowledge that uncertainty remains, and say that is acceptable because I have done enough and prepared enough, you have cleared the fourth criterion. You are ready to stop saving and start living. Now, let me address some common objections to this framework, because I know many of you are already constructing arguments for why you should keep saving. The first objection is, what if I live to 100? This is the longevity fear, and it is legitimate. People are living longer. A 65-year-old today has a reasonable chance of reaching 90 or beyond. But here is what one fearful miss. The 4% rule already accounts for a 30-year retirement. And you retire at 67 and live to 97. You are within that window. A 4% rule is conservative. Historical analysis shows that in most scenarios, you end up with more money at the end of 30 years than you started with, because markets generally grow over long periods. If you are genuinely concerned about extreme longevity, you can use a 3.5% withdrawal rate instead of 4%. Buy a longevity annuity that kicks in at 85 to provide income if you live exceptionally long. These adjustments address the tail risk without requiring you to continue saving indefinitely. The second objection is, what about healthcare costs? This is perhaps the most legitimate concern, because healthcare in America is expensive and unpredictable. My response is twofold. First, make sure healthcare is properly accounted for in your essential expenses. Include your Medicare premiums, supplemental insurance, and a realistic estimate of out-of-pocket costs. Do not pretend healthcare is free just because you have Medicare second. Recognize that most catastrophic healthcare costs occur at the end of life and may be covered by different mechanisms than retirement savings. Long-term care insurance can protect against the cost of extended nursing home stays. Medicaid provides a safety net if assets are exhausted. And frankly, if you are facing a $500,000 medical situation, no reasonable amount of additional saving would have fully prepared you anyway. Healthcare uncertainty is real, but it does not mean you should save forever. It means you should plan realistically, have appropriate insurance, and accept that some risks cannot be fully eliminated. The third objection is, what about leaving money to my children? This is a values question more than a financial question. How much do you want to leave to your heirs versus how much do you want to enjoy yourself? There is no right answer, but I will offer a perspective. Your children are probably better served by having a parent who lived fully and modeled a healthy relationship with money than by receiving a larger inheritance. They are probably better served by your presence at family events you could afford to attend than by extra dollars in their brokerage accounts after you are gone. They are probably better served by seeing you enjoy the fruits of your labor than by watching you deny yourself everything in the name of leaving them more. If leaving a legacy is important to you, factor that into your planning. Designate a specific amount for heirs and give yourself permission to spend the rest. But do not use your children as an excuse to avoid living your own life. That is not a gift to them. It is a burden. The fourth objection is, what about market crashes? What if I stop saving and then the market drops 50%? This is why the first criterion matters so much. If your guaranteed income covers your essential expenses, a market crash does not threaten your survival. It might mean fewer vacations or less dining out for a few years, but it does not mean losing your home or going hungry. Moreover, market crashes are temporary. Every crash in history has eventually been followed by recovery. If you have a reasonable time horizon and can reduce discretionary spending during downturns, you can weather crashes without catastrophe. The deeper issue with the market crash fear is that it assumes you would have avoided the crash by continuing to save. But if you are investing your savings, they would have been in the market anyway. The crash happens to your existing money regardless of whether you add more continuing. To save does not protect you from crashes. It just means you have more money exposed to them. Let me talk about what happens psychologically when you finally give yourself permission to stop saving. For most people, it takes time to adjust. You have spent decades in accumulation mode. The habits are deeply ingrained. Seeing your account balances not grow or even decline as you spend feels wrong even when it is exactly what those accounts are for. I recommend a gradual transition. In your first year of not saving, do not dramatically increase spending. Instead, simply stop adding new money. Let yourself get used to accounts that are stable rather than growing. In your second year, begin spending more intentionally. Take a trip you have postponed. Replace items you have been making do with. Say yes to experiences you would previously have declined for cost reasons. By your third year, you should be in a sustainable rhythm. Spending at a rate your portfolio can support indefinitely, enjoying the life your decades of saving made possible. Looking at your accounts as resources to be used rather than scores to be maximized. Some people never make this transition. They cannot overcome the psychology of accumulation. They die with money they never spent, having denied themselves for no reason. Do not be one of those people. You did not save all those years so you could die rich. You saved so you could live securely and enjoyably. If you have met the 4 criteria, you have earned that security. Claim it. I have also observed that the people who struggle most with this transition often have deep psychological associations between money and self-worth. Their net worth feels like their actual worth watching the number decline. Even for good reasons, feels like personal diminishment. This is a mental trap that requires deliberate effort to escape. Your value as a human being has nothing to do with your account balances. You are not less worthy because you spent money on a vacation. You are not diminished because your portfolio is smaller this year than last year. You are exactly as valuable as you always were, regardless of the numbers on a statement. If you find yourself unable to spend even when the math supports it, consider whether this psychological pattern is operating in your life. It might be worth talking to a therapist or counselor who specializes in financial psychology. The inability to enjoy money you have earned is not a financial problem. It is an emotional problem that happens to manifest in financial behavior. Some people also need permission from an authority figure before they can change their behavior. If that is you, consider me that authority. I have spent my life studying money and how it works. I have more wealth than I could ever spend. And I am telling you directly that if you have met the 4 criteria, you have permission to stop saving and start spending, not recklessly, not wastefully, but intentionally and joyfully on a life worth living. Let me share what I have observed in people who successfully made the transition from saving to spending. First, they gave themselves permission. This sounds simple, but is actually the hardest step. They made a conscious decision that they had enough and that continuing to save was no longer serving them. They announced this decision to themselves and often to their families. They made it real by stating it out loud. Second, they created a spending plan just as they once created a saving plan. They decided where they wanted their money to go: travel, family experiences, charitable giving, home improvements, whatever mattered to them. They allocated money to these priorities deliberately rather than just defaulting to not spending. Third, they monitored their progress in reverse. Instead of tracking how much they saved, they tracked how much they spent. They celebrated hitting spending targets, just as they once celebrated hitting savings targets. They reframed spending as success rather than failure. Fourth, they built in accountability. Some people told their children they were planning to spend their money and that the inheritance might be smaller than expected. Others worked with financial advisors who encouraged appropriate spending rather than endless accumulation. They created structures that supported spending rather than undermined it. Fifth, they accepted imperfection. Some months they spent too much. Some months they spent too little. The market went up and down. Plans changed. They did not beat themselves up about it. They recognized that life is imprecise. Roughly right is good enough. These 5 practices Your success in creating a plan, monitoring progress, building accountability, and accepting imperfection transformed their relationship with money. They went from fearful hoarders to intentional spenders. They finally enjoyed what they had built. Now let me give you some practical numbers to work with, because I know many of you want specifics. If your essential expenses are $4,000 per month and you have Social Security of $2,500 per month, you need $1,500 from other sources to cover essentials. That is $18,000 per year. A portfolio of $450,000 can generate that at 4%. Add another $2,000 per month for discretionary spending, and your total need is $6,000 per month, or $72,000 per year. Social Security covers $30,000, so you need $42,000 from your portfolio. That requires a portfolio of about $1,050,000. If you have $1,050,000 in investments, plus Social Security of $30,000 per year, and your desired spending is $72,000 per year, you can stop saving forever. You are done. The math works. Adjust these numbers for your specific situation. Your Social Security might be higher or lower. Your expenses might be different. Your risk tolerance might suggest a 3.5% or 4.5% withdrawal rate rather than 4%, but the framework is the same. Guaranteed income plus sustainable portfolio withdrawals equals total spending capacity. If total spending capacity exceeds desired spending, you have enough. Let me close with a reflection on what enough actually means. We live in a culture that celebrates more money, more possessions, more accomplishment. The idea of enough is almost countercultural. It implies satisfaction with what you have. It implies that the race is over and you can stop running. But enough is not settling. It is not giving up. It is recognizing that you have achieved what you set out to achieve. You saved for retirement. Retirement is here. The saving worked. Now it is time for the next phase. That next phase is not about accumulation. It is about experience. It is about presence. It is about using the resources you built to create a life worth living. I have watched people accumulate fortunes and never enjoy them. I have watched people with modest means live richly because they knew when to stop saving and start living. The difference is not the amount of money. It is the wisdom to know when enough is enough. If you have met the 4 criteria I described, you have that enough. Your guaranteed income covers essentials. Your portfolio sustains your desired lifestyle. You have a buffer for surprises, and you have made peace with uncertainty. Give yourself permission to stop saving. Create a spending plan, monitor your progress, build in accountability, accept imperfection, and then go live. You worked hard for decades. You sacrificed, you delayed gratification, you did everything right. Now enjoy the reward. That is what it was all for. Do not wait until you are on your deathbed, looking at account statements full of money you never spent, wishing you had lived differently. Make the decision now while you have health, while you have time, while the experiences you want are still available to you. You have enough. Seriously, now go live like it. I want to share one final thought that has guided my own relationship with money over the decades. Money is a tool. It is not a score. It is not an identity. It is not a measure of your worth as a human being. It is a tool that allows you to do things. A tool that sits in a drawer unused is worthless no matter how finely crafted it is. A hammer that never drives a nail. A saw that never cuts wood. A wrench that never turns a bolt. These are not valuable tools. They are wasted potential occupying space. Money that sits in accounts unspent is the same. It is potential that was never realized. It is capability that was never exercised. It is a tool that never performed its function. The function of retirement savings is to fund retirement, not to sit there making you feel secure while you live insecurely, not to grow into a larger number that impresses no one and helps no one, not to pass to heirs who may or may not need it and who would probably rather have had your presence than your portfolio. The function is to fund a life worth living in your final decades, travel time with family, hobbies and interests, comfort and convenience, generosity, peace of mind. These are what retirement savings are for. If you are not using your savings for these purposes, you are not saving. You are hoarding, and hoarding serves no one. I understand the fear, I really do. The fear of running out, of being a burden, of losing independence. These are not irrational fears. They are rooted in genuine uncertainty about how long you will live and what you will need. But there comes a point where preparation becomes paralysis, where prudence becomes prison, where saving becomes a way to avoid living rather than a way to enable it. If you have met the 4 criteria, you have passed that point. Further saving does not make you safer. It makes you poorer in the ways that actually matter. Poorer in experiences, poorer in relationships, poorer in joy. You did not spend your working life building wealth so you could die with it intact. You built it so you could use it, so use it. That is not irresponsibility. That is the whole point. Go take the trip, replace the worn out furniture. Help the grandchild with college, donate to the cause. You care about, say yes to the dinner invitation instead of calculating what it will cost. Live the life you earned the right to live. You have enough, you have always had enough, or at least you have had enough for longer than you realized. The only thing you have been missing is the knowledge that you could stop saving and the permission to do so. Consider this that knowledge and that permission. You have worked hard, you have saved diligently, you have done everything right. Now enjoy the reward. That is what it was always for. That is what you were always working toward. The finish line is behind you. You can stop running now. The race is over and you have won. Now claim your victory and live the life you have earned.